Welcome to the Wordsmith Forge Christian Fiction Podcast. This is where you meet the Christian fiction authors who write the books you want and ought to read. Well, thank you, Vaughn, so much for joining us on the Wordsmith Forge Podcast. Would you mind just giving our viewers an introduction of yourself?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's a privilege to connect with you all the way from South Africa. And so I've recently just released The Degradation, which was in November last year. And it was quite a rough ride. We have something that you call rolling blackouts, load shedding, where all the electricity was cut off and, for hours at a time, every day. And writing a book in those challenging situations, it was a challenge, but it was fun at the same time. I'm turning 44 now, and I think for me, it's life experiences which are incorporated into the book, my own personal experiences, which in the end, I didn't want to give through to the reader as autobiography or any such, but I wanted the readers to actually connect with the book, because a lot of experiences that I have had throughout my life, a lot of people went through, and I wanted to make that something special, where the reader can actually, through the character, see themselves in his situation, and then also the way that he grows throughout the storyline.
Before we get too deep into the book, could you share a little bit more about yourself? If you don't mind, talk a little bit about your walk with Christ. When did you first become a believer?
So I was at the age of 7. Actually, our neighbors, they went to church. I didn't grow up in a Christian household, which is strange enough because my mother used to read out of the children's Bible for me every night. Oh, and it got to a stage where she even allowed me to choose which Bible story was my favorite, which I wanted to hear before going to bed. And my favorite was always about Stephen, the first martyr. Yeah. And eventually our neighbors, they went to church. I used to play with my neighbors, their children. They had 4, and they invited me to church. And so from there I went to church, and then we joined the Full Gospel Church and got baptized. And from there on, it was a beautiful walk with Christ. My father actually had an absent father. It was always work and not much time for his children or his wife even. And but God blessed me through our youth, having a youth leader, and a much older man. And he took me under his wing. He personally always wanted a son. And there was a beautiful relationship that grew out of that. And spent some time with him at his house after school, where we talked about life. We talked about how to implement the Bible. And he was specifically a very staunch, avid, how can I put it, fan of Smith Wigglesworth, as well as Finis Jennings Dake, who wrote God's Plan for Man. And through that, we really connected. And that was really amazing and privileged enough to have that spiritual father in my life. Yes, I can see it. That would be amazing, I think. So you live in South Africa, which to me is just, it kind of blows my mind that we can just sit here and
and communicate. The toughest part was figuring out, okay, what time is it in South Africa? But, there's other things that make our life a little easier to figure out, like our smartphones and things like that. But having never been to Africa or South Africa, we have all kinds of poor ideas of what it's like there. But do you have some place in God's creation, maybe 15, 20 minutes from where you live, where you go to kind of recharge your battery or just refresh yourself? A favorite park or?
For me, I don't necessarily go into nature. Wherever I am, especially if I'm at work, something will grab my attention, and then just pray it through right there and then. I'm currently working on a farm, which is actually a company, so I do the sales for potatoes. We've got cattle. We've also got trees which we cut down and then use for pulp, etc. Mm-hmm. But my role is mostly down at the depot, and unfortunately, I don't knock off at 5 necessarily. Because the roads are in such a bad condition that when they collect the potatoes from the farms, we've got 3 in the company, and they send it down to the depot. That sometimes even at 8 o'clock, I'm still waiting for the transport to deliver the potatoes. So in that sense, that is why sometimes even after everyone's gone home, I sit in my little office at the depot and then just spend some time with God. So there's not necessarily a place where I go to. It's just fitting it in and then living it. Even weekends.
It's a place where you are.
That's right.
Not where you go to. It's just where you are. And
that's right.
I think a lot of us are that way. We have to take advantage of a quiet time wherever we are to just refresh ourselves. Kind of an interesting question that I ask all of my guests is, what are 3 of your favorite movies?
Wow, 3 of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it's not a trick question, but I would have a hard time coming up with them right off the bat for myself.
I would definitely say The Godfather is
one
of my favorite movies.
I won't stop you on that, but The Godfather kind of gives us an idea that enjoy watching if they're in that venue. I noticed that just self-published bundle. So is there something other than this book that you've written?
I've actually written a few poems and so on.
Ah.
There was a time in my life where things really got, difficult. When you're a follower of God, not everything always works out as planned, and there's a lot of times when God takes you through situations to reveal more of yourself in the areas that you actually think you're okay in, when in actual fact you're not really, and. So for me, it was finding the right job, as you said previously in our little discussion ahead of before time.
Right.
There's quite a few things that I did, and if you go through it, it seems like I don't stick to one thing. I jump a bit around, but in actual fact, I used to work for this one company. And unfortunately, they did certain things under the table, and they expected me to do that as well, and then put my signature on it. And for me, that's simply just a no-go. So eventually, our paths ended there. And financially, I went through quite a difficult time. And you start asking questions, and especially when you go through these difficult times, you think, Lord, I've been faithful. I've done what you expected from me. Why am I going through this? And things really got so bad that eventually I ended up started doing, because I couldn't find work, even places where I sent my CV to, and I thought, that's a perfect match. I need, it's a no-brainer. They will hire me, and then they don't. And so eventually I thought, you know what, I can't just sit and wait for something to happen. And I started with doing garden services, watched what other garden services did and didn't do. And most of them, they didn't do the garden beds, they just mow the lawn. And then they also didn't pick up dog droppings. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to give them a full service, not just mow the lawn or do the garden beds, we'll pick up the dog droppings. And for someone who thought is not very prideful, that really brings you down to earth when you start doing that and you realize, Lord, I've actually been actually had quite a bit of pride in my life, and but I must say that once you go through that and you realize that it's not about me, it's not about my qualifications, it's not about who I think I am, it's about God and only God. And I think once you get to that point and you don't care about people around you or your status or your rank in your workplace, you realize that all of those things fall away, and it doesn't really matter. If you can't declare God and what you believe in wherever you go, then you're wasting your time. You're missing it. You're missing the mark.
Well, I agree with you. And,
so for me, that...
Thank you for being so transparent. It makes you a real person, someone that we can definitely relate to. Let's talk about your book a little. I read the sample and teaser. I now know more than I knew, but I really don't know anything at all. And so it's a pretty good teaser. Catches your attention. Your journalist wakes up in the hospital, and his fiance's daughter has been kidnapped. It leaves us hanging, and I know we don't want to give away the outcomes, but you certainly pull us in and make us wonder, well, what else? What's this all coming to? Can you bring us in a little further?
The book is the main character is a investigative journalist, and the reason I've chosen him is because in South Africa we've currently got a lot of political killings, and journalists who've actually been silenced through murder. We've got a lot of those things happening, and unfortunately the news agencies, that they don't put a lot of focus on the people who brings out these and delves up all of these things that's going on in South Africa currently. So that's where I just wanted to bring the focus back to what is currently happening in not in South Africa necessarily, but the world.
Right.
Regarding his fiancée, whose daughter's been kidnapped, that is also from personal experience, from someone that I know who's close to me, who that has happened to. And I thought bringing that in a fictionalized way, not wanting them to be victimized, or especially with the situation with their daughter. So a lot of the things that I do write actually is from personal experience that I bring into this fictional character, and throughout the book, he goes on a journey basically, and for me it's about our journey, the reader's journey, as they go through life, experiencing what they're experiencing, and then also how do you experience life currently, and then translate it to your belief. So the character actually goes through everything, trying to figure out the package that he receives, because there's the mysterious package, and in this package, he reflects back on the previous packages that he received, and it brings back all these memories of certain figures high up in the government, who actually wants to quiet him by sending him body parts, like a tongue, for instance, as they say in the book.
Yeah.
And so, in the end, it is not what he thought it is, but it actually reflects on the history, his personal history, and that of his family. So it takes him through. So you get to know the character, part of his personality, why he is the way he is, the way that he thinks. And then in chapter 2, we jump to another character, which also forms part of where they are. But his background is totally different. But it also reflects, in a way, the belief system, and that which we currently experience in a Western world, and how you amalgamate being a Westerner and Christianity, and it puts these two thoughts on opposite sides and compares that to our reaction. So it's not just an entertaining story, there's a message behind it, but without trying to affect the reader's interpretation thereof. So the whole story, I don't want to give away too much, but in the end he finds out why the package was sent, and it brings up a lot of things from his past. Yeah.
Well, the title of chapter 1, which, let me get it right here, That Which Was and Is Yet to Come. That sounds like it's kind of apocalyptic, or from the book of Revelation, but it's kind of an intriguing title for chapter 1.
Yeah, it is. For me, chapter 1 is basically when you look at the end, as you say in the book of Revelation, it comes full circle. But with that comes the knowledge, which he previously didn't have, to understand where this is heading, where he finds himself currently in his life and his walk with Christ.
So how long did it take you to write this book?
Well, from starting to write it, so for me it was a lot of personal experience that I first wrote down, and then news articles and everything which I actually just gathered information, doing a lot of research, as well as thinking of the type of book that I myself would like to read. And then eventually when I started writing, having all of the information and so on, putting it together, that took me just over 2 years.
Oh my, yeah. Well, it certainly sounds like you've got a complete book, start to finish, so I definitely encourage our viewers to check this book out and see if it's something they'd like to acquire. Anything that surprised you about getting it published? Was that difficult?
Yes, getting it published was quite a challenge. Especially in South Africa, and the things that I wrote about. I sent it through to one of the publishers in South Africa, and in their reply they've got this little section where they give a reason why they decline having it published, or why they will have it published. And they left that section blank in the email, just saying that they're not interested. And but I know the reason for not wanting to publish it, because unfortunately there's a lot of things that gets swept under the carpet, that people don't want to publish in the newspaper, etc., which happens. But then again, I'm thankful for the publishers in America who really saw the potential in the book. My hats off to freedom of speech in America and the freedoms that you have there. I really think, even though unfortunately I've never been there, it's really a great country. You know.
Well, unfortunately, I think most of the people in the United States don't realize it. Anyway, I certainly appreciate the position you put yourself in, and it's obvious that you have some experiences that we can all learn from. I'm happy that you were able to put it in a book. Any advice that you would give aspiring authors as far as them writing a book?
I think for me, I would start off with the words of Miles Monroe. I believe he said it, that the richest place in the world is the grave. Because that's where the books that should have been written were not written.
Yeah.
And I think for anyone that's, especially as a Christian, I think now's the time to speak up. And now is really the time to, with everything that's going on in the world, all the chaos, there are people that need to hear the gospel. There are people out there that need to experience God and not see God. If I can take your listeners to Job, where he said in the end, after going through all of that, he said, in the beginning I heard of you, but now I see you. And that's and I think that is the key here, is actually to not hear only of God, but to experience God, to see him for who he really is, who he is in your life. Because a lot of times we hear of God the provider, Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah Nisi, and we hear all these words, and sure that it's God the provider, but the moment you experience that yourself, him providing for you, that's when you see it, that's when you experience him. And for me personally, there's so many things that you as a person that you go through, and you think that might be unique, but that's possibly the only key, that when you put it in a book, those words, those specific words, your talents, God will use to convert someone. And that's what it's all about. It's allowing God to, as a miner, to delve and bring out the gold inside of you, that those characteristics that he placed inside of you, those abilities, those talents, to bring it to the fore and use it to the glory of his name. And I think that's what you have to do. Just go for it, do it, and allow God full reign over your book, and you'll see the miracles that God will do through it, just through by being obedient.
That's good words. I like that. I think that's exactly what you've done. Do you have another book in your future?
I've got quite a few ideas, but for me currently, writing this book, I'd like to say it's a prompting. It was a prompting of the Holy Spirit to write this book. That pushed me through 2 years of, like I said previously, struggling with load shedding and all of these things, and a laptop and that's really old. So I haven't really felt that yet, and I don't want to write anything if it's just going to be something that, it's nice and it's entertaining. For me, it needs to mean something. There has to be a message between the lines, and for that to happen, I'll wait on God and then see. Only then that will be my second book. But until then,
All right. How can people who read your book interact with you?
Well, you have my email address.
Yes, and
if there's any questions that someone has or would like to know, feel free to email me.
Okay.
So And I would love to to hear from them, especially if they've read the book and what they think of it, and what it means to them.
Appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I've enjoyed this time that we've spent together before we started recording, and now, could I pray for you, Vaughn?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Father, we just thank you so much for the gifts that you give each one of us, and we thank you for Vaughn, who has taken that gift and applied it to a book, and we know that there are people that will read his book and benefit from it. If there's only one person, it's in your will, and your will has been done. If it's a million people, that's also your will. So we just ask that you bless Vaughn's ministry, that you carry him forward and keep him in good health and in good spirits. We give you all the praise, and we ask it in your name of Jesus Christ. Amen. I do wish you the best, and if God lays another book on you, I'm sure it'll be coming out. So thank you, Vaughn. You have a good day. It's been great.
Thank you, Mike. You as well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wasn't that a great interview with Vaughn? I just finished polishing the post-production interview that we did with him a few months ago. If nothing else, Vaughn has showed us how fortunate we are to live in the USA. I expect to keep in touch with Vaughn, and if he writes another book, I'll talk to him again, God providing. But keep this book, The Degradation, in mind. As I interview these Christian authors, I find it fascinating to hear their stories. I talk with authors from the state of Washington across the nation to Florida, and now even to South Africa. In spite of their differences, there is one common thread, a common theme that binds us all together as brothers. We are all coming through the Father, through Christ the Son. Well, I hope you enjoy getting to know these authors I present here on the Wordsmith Forge Christian Fiction Podcast. Please support them by taking a look at their books. If you buy one or two or more, do your part by leaving a review for them. As far as the podcast goes, I'm extremely interested in what you think. So please comment with any suggestions you might have, like who would you like for me to interview? If you find these podcasts interesting, share it with your friends. If you find these podcasts inspirational, please subscribe. If you find them both informational and inspiring, please tell the whole wide world any way you can. Don't forget to like us, because I do have high hopes for the Wordsmith Forge Christian Fiction Podcast, and I hope you do too. Until next time, may God bless you abundantly and cover you with His amazing grace. Keep reading clean. This is Mike Baines, out.